I, 22F at the time, grew up in a small, kind of forgotten town in Indiana. You know the kind, one gas station, one bar, one church, and everyone knows how much your dad drinks and how your mom never came back after she'd visited her sister in '09. That's where I'm from. For most of my life, it was just me and my dad, Derek. He was charismatic. The type who could charm a cop out of a ticket, fix a broken carburetor with a cigarette between his lips, and tell a story so well you'd forget to ask if any of it was true. But when the sun went down and the house got quiet, that charm had nowhere to go. And neither did his anger. My plan was simple: get out. I worked my ass off in high school. Straight A's, part-time job at Sal's Diner, babysitting on weekends. I saved every dollar I could. When I got accepted into Central State University, nothing Ivy League, but solid, I cried so hard I gave myself a nosebleed. I was going to major in education. I wanted to be the teacher I never had. The tuition for the first semester came to a little over $11,000. I had about $7,500 saved. My FAFSA covered some, I was approved for a loan, and I had just enough to make the first major payment. I kept the rest of the money, my savings, cash gifts, graduation cards, in a shoebox in my closet. Until the week before move-in day, when I did something really stupid. I gave it to my dad. He wasn't supposed to spend it. Just hold it. He had a safe in the back bedroom he kept under the floorboards. It'll be fine in there, he said. No one's gonna touch it. Just until orientation, I said. He nodded and even joked, "You're still gonna visit after they turn you into one of those liberal brainwashed college kids?" I forced a smile. "Sure, Dad." He laughed, patted me on the back, and walked away with the envelope like it weighed nothing. 5 days later, I was packing my bags. My friend Hallie was driving me to campus in her beat-up Jeep. I was nervous but buzzing with excitement. I had dreams. A plan. For the first time in my life, I could almost see the exit sign glowing at the end of the tunnel. The morning we were set to leave, I asked for the envelope. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking instant coffee and flipping through an auto parts catalog. "Hey," I said. "Can I get the tuition money?" He didn't even look up. "What money?" I laughed. Because I thought he was joking. "You know. The envelope I gave you for the safe." He folded the page he was reading and said, flatly, "Oh. That. It's gone." I blinked. "Gone?" "Yeah." Sip of coffee. "I had to use it." I remember my heart starting to pound so loud I could hear it in my ears. "You used it? For what?" He shrugged. "Bills. Groceries. Car stuff." "Groceries?" I said. "We eat ramen and discount bread." He rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic." "You spent everything?" I said I used it. "Don't start with the attitude. Maybe if you didn't trust people with your money." "It was for school." He stood up, slow and deliberate, like I had personally insulted him. "And what the hell were you gonna do? You think you'd make it out there, teaching kids like you know better than everyone? You're not built for that world, Liv. Hell, you barely kept your head on straight here." My voice cracked. "You promised." "I never promised anything." And then he just walked into the living room and turned on the goddamn TV. I don't really remember what happened next. I think I stood there for a full minute, trying to breathe. I didn't cry yet. I just went to my room, closed the door, and stared at the wall. I called Hallie. Told her I couldn't go. She came over anyway. When I told her what happened, she looked at me like she was waiting for the punchline. She offered me the front seat, said I could still come, crash with her a few nights, figure things out. That moment changed everything. So I packed a single duffel. No plan. No tuition. No dorm assignment. No goodbye. I walked past my father while he watched reruns of Cops and said nothing. He didn't even turn around. Hallie drove me 3 hours to Cedarview, a college town with a 2-year community college that was still accepting late applications. We slept on her floor for 3 nights before I got accepted into their general studies program under emergency status. I applied for grants. I picked up night shifts at a 24-hour pizza joint called Rocco's. I worked from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., then classes from 9 to noon, homework at the public library, naps on benches. I lived like that for months. But I was free. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to go home, because I didn't have one. 3 years later, I transferred to Hollow Ridge University with a full ride based on academic recovery. I was on track to graduate with honors. I'd made it. No help. No calls. No visits. Then one afternoon, right after finals, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was him. He looked older, thinner. Worn down in that quiet, pitiful way alcoholics start to fray at the edges. He said he'd been thinking about me. Said he wanted to see how things turned out. I didn't say a word. Just closed the door in his face. The next morning, I uploaded a photo to Instagram. Me, in my cap and gown. Graduation day. Diploma in hand, wind in my hair, and a smile I didn't even have to fake. The caption? Thanks for the motivation, Dad. Nothing inspires success like your complete lack of faith in me. After I closed the door on him, I stood in the hallway for a long time. No crying. No shaking. No big dramatic moment. Just silence. It was the kind of silence you can feel in your bones. The kind that isn't empty, it's full of everything you wanted to say but knew wouldn't matter. The Instagram post hit harder than I expected. At first, I thought maybe 10 or 15 people would see it. Mostly friends from college, maybe some kids I knew in high school. But within a few hours, it started to blow up. People I hadn't talked to in years commented things like, "This girl, you're amazing. I remember your dad, yikes. You're a badass." Even Mr. Hadley, my 11th grade math teacher, left a comment. "Proud of you, Olivia. You did what most can't." But the one that hit hardest? Hallie. Just 2 words. Always knew. I thought that would be the end of it. But then the messages started. From people I barely remembered. From girls I sat next to in homeroom. From a guy who used to deliver propane tanks with my dad. And then, from my dad himself. At first, I didn't recognize the number. The message was short. "So that's what you think of me?" I didn't answer. 3 hours later, another. "You're telling people I ruined your life?" Then, "You ungrateful brat. You don't even know the things I've done for you." That one made me laugh. Not out of amusement, out of disbelief. Like he thought all of this was up for debate. Like history was just a thing you could argue into changing. I blocked the number. He made another account. Instagram this time. New name, no profile pic. He sent me a DM. "I gave you everything. You act like I was some kind of monster. You think you got out all by yourself? You wouldn't last a week if I hadn't raised you tough." Raise me tough? That phrase looped in my head for days. Like it was supposed to be a compliment. A badge of honor. Like stealing from me was just part of some twisted boot camp of life lessons. He didn't raise me tough. He raised me tired. The next week, I took the photo down. Not because I regretted it, but because it had served its purpose. The people who mattered saw it. And the one person who didn't? He couldn't ignore it. Graduation was behind me. I'd officially accepted a position as a youth counselor in training at a nonprofit that worked with kids who were aging out of the foster system. The job paid crap, the hours were brutal, but I loved it. One of my first clients was a 17-year-old named Damon. Closed off. Sarcastic. Angry at the world in a way I recognized like a mirror. He called me Miss College Girl for the first 3 sessions. Then one day he asked, "You ever hate your parents?" I didn't say anything. He nodded like that was an answer. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." The work helped me heal in ways I didn't expect. Not the big Hollywood healing. Not the crying in a bathtub kind. Just quiet, steady recalibration. I was showing up for people. Making plans. Building routines. And then, one Thursday afternoon, I came home to find a letter stuck in the crack of my apartment door. No return address. Just my name. In handwriting I hadn't seen since I was 16 and forging his signature on field trip permission slips. Inside, a single sheet of notebook paper. "I saw you. On that stage. You looked happy. I'm glad you made it, even if I couldn't help. Or wouldn't. I don't expect anything. Just wanted you to know, I do remember. I remember it all. I wish I'd done better. Dad." I stared at it for a while. Not sad. Not angry. Just still. He remembered. But remembering wasn't the same as changing. And a wish wasn't the same as making it right. I didn't respond. A few nights later, I visited the safe house where Damon was staying. He was sitting on the porch, hoodie up, headphones in. I sat next to him, didn't say anything for a while. Then I asked, "What would you do if someone who hurt you finally admitted they did it?" He didn't look at me. Just shrugged. "Doesn't unhurt me," he said. We sat in silence for a long time. The voicemail came 2 weeks later. I didn't answer the unknown number, but it left a message. "Hey. It's your Aunt Kendra. I don't know if anyone told you, but Derek's in the hospital. Liver's shot. He's not doing good. They're saying he might not make it through the month. I'm not saying you should come. Just thought you'd want to know." I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, heartbeat like a drum in my throat. I listened to the message again. And again. And again. Then I deleted it. But I didn't sleep that night. Because deep down, I knew. This wasn't over yet. I didn't plan to go. I told myself that 100 times. I said it out loud while brushing my teeth. I whispered it at red lights. I wrote it in my notes app like a mantra. You don't owe him anything. But the thing is, your brain can say one thing and your bones can say something else. And my bones were restless. 3 days after Aunt Kendra's voicemail, I took a half day at work, packed a duffel bag with nothing but a hoodie and my high school volleyball hoodie, yeah, volleyball, not baseball, Dad, and drove 4 hours back to the town I swore I'd never see again. It was early spring, but the trees were still dead, the grass yellowed like it gave up trying to grow there. Same old gas station. Same old boarded-up bakery. Same sagging porch on the house I used to dream about burning down. I didn't go to the house. I went straight to Bramble County Medical Center. Room 302. He didn't look like himself. He looked deflated. Smaller. Paler. Like a half-inflated version of the man who used to yell at me for walking like a snob when I came home from school wearing a backpack full of dreams. There was a machine beeping steadily in the corner. His arm had an 4. His lips were dry and cracked. And his eyes. His eyes opened when I walked in. "Olivia," he croaked. I didn't answer. I sat down across the room, far from the bed. I wasn't ready to be close to him. Not physically. Not emotionally. Not yet. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Didn't think you'd come." I almost didn't. He nodded, slowly. "Figured." Silence. Then he coughed, wet, painful, like it rattled his whole skeleton. He reached for the water cup, but his hand was trembling so badly he knocked it over. I didn't move. He stared at the spill like it had insulted him. Still mad? He asked. I tilted my head. What do you think? He gave this dry laugh, hollow as the man himself. Fair. More silence. Then, I saw the picture. The diploma. You looked good. I didn't thank him. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable in more ways than just physical. I messed up, he said finally. I know I did. I waited. I wasn't a good dad. I know that too. Still, I waited. I didn't know how to be better. I thought if I made you tough, you'd survive. I looked him dead in the eyes. I wasn't supposed to survive you. That one hit him. Hard. He turned his face toward the wall. I couldn't tell if he was crying or just breathing like he wanted to be anywhere else. I gave him that. I stayed 20 more minutes. Didn't say much. Didn't touch him. When I left, I said, "Goodbye, Derek." Not Dad. Just Derek. And he whispered, "I'm sorry." But it was too late. And I didn't need it anymore. Outside, the sky was gray. Not dramatic, not stormy, just flat, like the world was tired too. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I drove straight to a rest stop halfway home, ate a gas station sandwich that tasted like cardboard, and watched the sunset through a windshield that still smelled like old air freshener and borrowed strength. A week later, I got another call. No voicemail this time. Just a missed call from Aunt Kendra. Then a text. He passed this morning. That was it. No funeral details. No instructions. No pressure. Just the fact of it. He was gone. Just like that. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, maybe. Or anger. But all I felt was distance. Like the story had ended, but the echo kept going. A few days later, I got a certified letter. No return address. Inside was a cashier's check. $8,200. 00. There was a post-it note attached. Didn't fix anything. But it was yours to begin with. D. I stared at that check for a long time. It felt dirty. Not because it was money, but because it came too late. Like an apology wrapped in a receipt. I deposited it. Then donated every dollar to a scholarship fund for girls from broken homes trying to afford their first year of college. No name. No dedication. Just payment. I didn't go to the funeral. Didn't ask where he was buried. Didn't need to. I already buried him once, 3 years ago. Everything else was just paperwork. People don't tell you how strange grief can be when you're not sure what you lost. I wasn't mourning a father. I was mourning the version of him I used to pretend existed. The one I built out of scraps, a laugh here, a car ride there, the smell of motor oil and burnt toast. All stitched together like a movie reel I could replay whenever I needed to believe he was something better. That version died a long time ago. But for some reason, it still hurt. I started dreaming about our old house again. Not the bad dreams. Not the screaming ones or the nightmares where I'm locked out of the safe, banging my fists bloody. No, these were worse. They were quiet. In one dream, I was 12 again, sitting on the porch with a juice box and mosquito bites on my knees. Dad was next to me, carving something into the armrest with his pocket knife. "You're gonna leave this place someday," he said. "And when you do, don't look back. Nothing here but ghosts." I woke up crying. Because the real him never said that. But I needed someone to. I started pulling out old notebooks. Stuff I hadn't touched in years. Back in high school, when things were bad, I used to write letters I never sent. Pages and pages of angry rants, sarcastic thank yous, imagined conversations. I found one labeled, "For When He Dies." It was 4 pages long, written in all caps, red ink. Furious. Exhausted. I don't remember writing it, but the pain in every sentence felt like it was still wet. You made me strong, but not in the way you wanted. You taught me to lie, but only so I could survive you. You broke me, and then laughed when I tried to fix it. And somehow, I still wish you'd tried. I folded it in half and put it through the shredder. Some things don't need to be kept. At work, things were steady. Heavy, but steady. I was assigned to a new client, Jace, 16, withdrawn, sarcastic, same haircut my dad had when I was a kid. He refused to speak in full sentences, rolled his eyes a lot, and liked to call our sessions state-mandated babysitting. But during our 4th session, I asked him about his mom. He shrugged. She's around. And your dad? Not. I nodded. Was he ever? That made him pause. He looked out the window and said, he used to take me fishing. Silence. Then, but only when he was sober. So, like twice. He didn't say anything else. But I saw it in his face. That flicker. That little kid still holding on to 2 fishing trips like they could outweigh all the empty dinners, all the forgotten birthdays, all the nights spent hoping someone would come home and just be better. I didn't push. I just said, that sounds familiar. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't have to. I visited my old town one last time. Not for Derek. For me. I drove down past the church, past the corner store that now had boarded up windows and for-leaf spray painted on the glass. The house was still there. Paint peeling. Roof sagging. A different car in the driveway. Someone had installed a tire swing in the front yard. It looked like a stranger's life. Good. I sat in my car across the street for a long time. Not crying. Not shaking. Just breathing it in. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I let myself remember something good. Not to forgive him. Not to excuse him. Just to let myself have that memory without bitterness chewing at the edges. It was a summer afternoon. I was maybe 9. We were sitting on the tailgate of his truck, eating gas station corn dogs. He handed me a root beer and said, "You're gonna do things I'll never understand." I asked him what he meant. He just shrugged and said, "You're different." And that's good. I'd held on to that for years. Buried it under the shouting, the money, the night he said I was too dumb to finish college. But it had been real. And it was okay to keep that one. Just that one. I didn't go inside. Didn't knock. Didn't leave flowers or a letter or some poetic closure gesture. I just turned the engine back on and left. Didn't look in the rearview mirror. Not once. Back at home, I started sketching out a workshop for work. Resilience isn't just survival. It was meant for teens like Jace. Like me. Kids who grew up learning how to dodge instead of how to ask. There was a part of the draft where I wrote. Some of us weren't raised. We just grew. Around the damage. Through it. In spite of it. And somehow, we're still blooming. I didn't read it out loud yet. But one day, I will. It started with a file. Standard intake, name, age, last school attended, family situation, preferred pronouns, behavioral flags. Name, Eli Whitmore. Age, 15. School, suspended. Flagged for, defiance, verbal aggression, suspected substance use, runaway risk. Parent/guardian, Robert Whitmore, father. Mother, deceased. I didn't think anything of it at first. Another angry boy in a hoodie. Another don't touch me stare. Another case the system half abandoned before we even met. Then I read the father section. Robert W. frequently absent. Reports of emotional volatility. Previous CPS intervention, closed case. Known to dismiss counseling. History of controlling behavior. Not receptive to mental health outreach. And just like that, there he was. Not Robert. Derek. Different name. Different face. Same script. I met Eli in the rec room. He was sitting with his back to the door, tapping a pen against the metal frame of a folding chair like he was daring someone to tell him to stop. I didn't. I just sat down across from him. He didn't look up. I said, "I'm Olivia." "Nothing." "I read your file." Still nothing. Then, casually, "Sounds like your dad's kind of an asshole." His head snapped up so fast I thought he'd break his neck. His eyes narrowed, confused and furious all at once. Like I'd broken some sacred counselor rule. "You can't say that," he said. "I just did." Silence. Then, "You don't know him." "I don't have to." Another long pause. Then he muttered, "He's not all bad." There it was. The reflex. The defend and flinch loop I knew by heart. Over the next few weeks, Eli kept his distance. But he didn't leave. That's how I knew we were getting somewhere. He'd show up late, mumble through check-ins, pretend he wasn't listening, then repeat something I'd said verbatim 2 days later. Classic. One session, he told me his dad used to make him sit in the garage for hours when he was too emotional. Said he called it cool-down time. Eli was 8. Another time, he mentioned how his dad wouldn't let him cry at his mom's funeral. Told him, real men grieve with their hands. I asked him what that meant. He shrugged. Guess it means punch a wall or fix a car. Anything but talk. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Derek and his lessons. Like the time he poured out my lemonade and made me drink warm tap water because I talked back. Or when he told me no one liked a girl who was always trying to sound smarter than she was. Or how he looked me in the eye and said, "You're gonna be a real disappointment if you don't learn to take a joke." Eli didn't need saving. He needed someone to stop pretending it wasn't happening. So I told him a story. Not the whole thing. Just enough. I said, "When I was your age, someone told me I was never gonna make it. That I wasn't strong enough to handle real life. So I left. And they were wrong. But it still took me years to stop proving it to a ghost." He stared at me for a while. Said nothing. Then, "What happened to them?" "They died." He nodded. Then, "Did it help?" "No." Another beat. But it stopped getting in the way. A week later, Eli asked me if I'd ever lied to someone I loved just to stay sane. I told him I used to tell my reflection, "It's not that bad, just to keep brushing my teeth in the morning." He didn't laugh. But he stayed 6 minutes longer than usual that day. At home, I found myself walking around the apartment barefoot, staring at old notebooks again. I found one with a list from 2019. Things I'll do when I'm finally free. Drink coffee without guilt. Laugh loud in public. Buy a new backpack. Sleep past 6 a.m. Breathe and not wait for the backlash. Never become him. That last one had 3 circles around it. I touched it with my fingertip. Then added, "Help someone else not become him either." In a staff meeting the next day, our director brought up a new funding grant. They were looking to develop a trauma-informed mentorship program. Something peer-driven. Ground level. Real stories, real survival. They wanted ideas. I raised my hand. "So, what do you think?" That's what Carmen, our program director, asked me as she slid the grant proposal across the table. Title: Voices from the Fire, Surviving Family Trauma in Silence and Sound. Cheesy? Maybe. But powerful. The idea was simple. Those of us who came from trauma would help shape the curriculum. Share stories. Not just the polished TED Talk kind, but the real ones. The ones with cracked voices and unfinished sentences. They wanted my story to be the opening feature. Full disclosure. A short recorded interview. A written segment in the workbook. I read the bullet points. How did you survive? What would you say to your younger self? How do you define forgiveness? I stared at the page like it might grow fangs and bite me. Carmen said, you don't have to say yes. But people listen when it's real. Real. That word again. Later that night, I lay in bed, phone on my chest, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like a lazy clock. I thought about the first time I lied to a therapist. I was 16. Said, my dad gets stressed sometimes, instead of, he screams until the walls feel thinner than my skin. Said, we're not close, instead of, he stole my tuition money and called it a lesson. The next day, I visited the juvenile center again. Eli was in a mood. Didn't speak for 20 minutes. Just kicked the bottom edge of the table until I finally said, you're either bored or pissed. Which is it? He muttered, both. I smiled. Wanna talk about it? No. I leaned back. Okay. Wanna hear about my latest trauma circus instead? He actually looked up. Is that a real thing? Almost. Someone wants me to turn my life into a motivational episode. He raised an eyebrow. You mean like one of those, my dad was a monster and now I'm a winner, speeches? I laughed. Exactly that. Are you gonna do it? I don't know. He looked away. You should. Why? 'Cause if I heard someone like you talk when I was 10, maybe I'd have figured it out sooner. I didn't say anything. He added, but don't lie to make people feel better. Just say the stuff that hurts. Later, I walked through the community center's break room and caught a segment on TV. Some guy in a nice suit was being interviewed about childhood adversity. He said, resilience comes from struggle. As if it was a gift. Like trauma was a subscription box you open each month to find new muscles you didn't ask for. I turned the TV off. The next morning, I recorded my first draft. Just my phone. No script. Just breath and whatever came out. My name is Olivia Reardon. When I was 18, my dad stole the money I saved for college. I left. He said I'd never make it. 3 years later, I graduated with honors and never opened the door when he came back. That's the version people like. But here's the part they don't. I still check my locks twice every night. I still hear his voice when I get praised too much. I still can't drink root beer without feeling like I'm choking. And some days, I feel more like a survivor than a person. But I'm working on that. Not because he's watching. Because I am. I didn't listen to it after. I just emailed the file and pressed send. The piece went into the final draft of the program. I asked not to be featured by photo. Just voice. Just words. 2 weeks later, we launched the pilot. Eli sat in the back, hoodie over his head, arms crossed like a warning sign. When the video played, and my voice filled the room, he didn't move. But when it ended, he looked up, just once, and gave me this half nod. Not approval. Not gratitude. Something quieter. Recognition. That night, I got a DM private. No mutuals. No name. Just this. He did the same thing to me. I thought I was the only one who ran. Then another. Thank you. I've never told anyone what my mom took from me. Until now. I closed the app. Not because I was overwhelmed. But because I was enough. For once. I didn't expect the call. It came on a rainy Thursday, 2 weeks after the pilot program launched. I was sipping burnt coffee in the break room, scrolling through volunteer schedules, half listening to Eli and another kid argue over whose turn it was to mop. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost declined it, like I always did. But something made me answer. Hi, this is Lauren Kim, with WBR Public Radio. We heard your piece in Voices from the Fire and, well, it stuck with us. I didn't say anything. She continued, we're doing a special on stories of estrangement. Family betrayal, survival, that kind of thing. We'd love to have you speak, live. We think your voice matters. My stomach dropped. Not in fear. In that slow, sinking don't you dare commodify me kind of way. I asked, what is it exactly you want me to say? Lauren hesitated. Then, well, the truth. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no. Instead, I sat with it. I walked home in the drizzle that night, hands shoved in my coat, earbuds in, playing nothing. Just white noise. I thought about how the world loves a good redemption arc, loves to see you rise from ashes as long as you don't mention who lit the match. The next morning, Carmen called me into her office. Someone had reached out through the center's website. They'd heard the pilot. Not a parent. Not a sponsor. Not a stranger. Her name was Melissa Ray. I hadn't heard that name in nearly 10 years. Dad used to date her. Briefly. She lived in the next town over. Waitressed at a bowling alley. Big hair, bigger attitude. I remembered her voice, always sharp with sarcasm, always turned up to 10. But the message was calm. Measured. Too polite. I knew Derek years ago. I knew a different side than the one she's telling. I'd like a chance to speak with Olivia, off the record. I believe her. But there's more she doesn't know. I met Melissa at a neutral coffee shop in Westfield. She looked older, but not worse. Sun-stained skin, crow's feet, a dark green jacket that had definitely seen fights. She ordered tea. I didn't. We sat. And she said, "You're not wrong about him. But you didn't see everything either." I stayed silent. She went on. "I saw the version of Derek that tried, Olivia. After you left. For a while, he really did. He cut back on drinking. Got a job at the tire shop. Used to sit in the garage and listen to talk radio instead of yelling at walls." I didn't flinch. "He used to talk about you like you were already a legend. Said you were too smart for him. That you'd never come back, and he didn't blame you." Still, I stayed quiet. Melissa leaned in. "I'm not saying forgive him. God knows I never did. But I thought maybe hearing that would matter." I looked her in the eye and said, calm as a closed door, "You knew the man who showed up after he broke me." "I knew him before." She nodded slowly. "Then I guess we both lost someone different." That night, I stood in front of the mirror and practiced breathing. One in. One out. Hold nothing. I opened my laptop. Typed the email. Subject, WBR Public Radio, Estrangement Special. I'll do it. But only live. No editing. No scripts. And I say what I want. If that works, then I'm in. The studio was quiet. Cold. The mic smelled like dust and old interviews. A red on-air sign blinked above the glass. Lauren smiled through the booth. "Whenever you're ready." I leaned forward. Spoke steady. "My name is Olivia Reardon. I was 18 when my dad stole every cent I saved for college. He didn't apologize. He said I wouldn't have made it anyway. I left without saying goodbye. And I built a life he didn't get to ruin. But I'm not here to talk about healing. Or hope. Or how it all worked out, because some of it didn't. I still flinch when I smell his cologne. I still can't trust men who praise me too fast. I'm not better because of what he did. I'm better despite it." Silence. Then Lauren's voice crackled into my headphones. "Olivia, thank you." I left the station into a night thick with fog. Everything felt strangely quiet, like the air itself didn't know what to do with me now that I'd spoken. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Message. "I'm glad you said it out loud. I never could. Thank you." Another. "He hurt me too. But I didn't run. I wish I had." Another. "You're not just a survivor. You're real. That's rarer. But the one that stuck came from a familiar name I hadn't seen in years. Lena Martin. The girl who drove me away. The one who offered a front seat when I had nothing but a broken promise in a sealed safe. Her message just said, "You finally burned the bridge. I always knew you would. Proud of you. L." After the broadcast, I expected some kind of breakdown. A wave of regret. Tears in the shower. That familiar ache in the chest where his voice used to echo. Instead, there was nothing. Not numbness. Not peace. Just silence. And for once in my life, it wasn't a weapon. It was freedom. The next week, Carmen called me into her office again. She smiled like someone who knew a person was about to outgrow their current life. "We've had inquiries," she said. "Universities. Nonprofits. Podcasts. They want to book you. Speak. Write. Be the voice." I shook my head before she finished. "I'm not a voice," I said. "I'm just someone who stopped lying." I went home and cleaned my apartment for 5 hours straight. Not because it was dirty. Because I needed to mark something. Needed a ritual that wasn't fire or tears or shouting in the dark. I found a cardboard box in the back of the closet. Inside, the red hoodie I wore when I left home. The envelope from the hospital with the check. A cracked photo frame with a picture of me and my dad from 2006. One of my old notebooks, the one labeled "Do Not Read Ever." I carried the box down to the dumpster behind the building. No ceremony. No matches. I just let it go. Watched the lid close. And that was that. 3 days later, I met Eli at the bus station. He'd finally aged out of the program. Got placed into transitional housing. He had a duffel bag, no family to call, and that same damn hoodie-like armor. "I'm not gonna say thanks," he muttered. "I'd be disappointed if you did," I said. He cracked the smallest smile. "You really think people change?" "No," I said. "But I think we can." He nodded. Then walked onto the bus and never looked back. Just like I did once. That night, I sat down at my desk. Opened a blank document. Typed the title. Letters to the version of me that stayed. Not a memoir. Not a warning. Just the truth, carved clean. Not for strangers. Not for sympathy. For the girl who almost belie. The last chapter was short. I don't forgive him. I don't owe that to a ghost. What I owe, to myself, to the girl who walked away with nothing, is this. That I never shrink to fit someone else's silence again. Somewhere, someone will still call him a good man. That's fine. They didn't see the safe. They didn't hear the way he said you weren't gonna make it anyway, like it was a gift. Let them remember their version. Mine is carved in steel. And mine is done.